Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guests today are Krishna Narayanaswamy, who is the co-founder and CTO at Netskope. With him is Mike Anderson, who is the Chief Digital and Information Officer. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We're delighted to have you. So guys, I want to start with yourselves and giving our audience a very brief, quick background of your journey in tech. Mike, if you wouldn't mind starting, tell us a little bit about your journey in tech, and then we'll move on to yourself, Krishna.
So I've actually been at Netskope now since March. The short of my background is I've spent my entire career in technology. The last decade has been spent as a CIO working in companies like Crossmark, a 40,000 employee company in the retail consumer goods space. Most recently, before joining Netskope, I was the CIO for North America at Schneider Electric. But prior to being a CIO, I spent most of my career, started out as a software engineer, but quickly moved into roles running business development, sales, operations for a variety of companies in the tech space of all sizes. And that's what I've been doing for the past 25 years.
Wonderful. And then Krishna, over to yourself. Love to learn a little bit more about your background, which will obviously lead nicely then into the origin story behind Netskope.
My background has been in tech all my career, engineer by education. We started Netskope in 2012. Prior to Netskope, I was at Juniper Networks, another technology company where I worked on networking and security technology for firewalls, IPSs, and so on. And I'm a recent transplant to California. Prior to that, I spent a good chunk of my career in the East Coast in Boston area. Started my career at Digital Equipment Corporation, one of the big two at that time, IBM and Digital. And that was my entry into networking, where I worked on technologies like FDDI, ATM, and so on. And in 1997, I did another startup called Top Layer Networking on traffic optimization. And then slowly at the turn of the century in 2000, that is when I started getting into security, when the likes of CNN and Yahoo and others were getting hit with big DDoS attacks. I started looking at security technologies and how we can threats like DDoS and vulnerabilities for IPSs and so on. So that's my background all along in networking and security for, again, over 25 years.
Thank you for that, which sets up nicely for Netskope and the origin story. For anyone not familiar with the business, Krishna, can you tell us the overall objective at Netskope, what you guys are trying to do to tackle this problem?
So when we started Netskope in 2012, we identified that organizations were moving away from hosted applications that they built or they hosted third-party applications in their environment toward adopting cloud applications. And when you look at the security landscape, there was a void in terms of addressing this trend. And the second trend we had observed was also remote working, right? And so we said there's a nice opportunity to build a next generation security company that would address some of these trends. We never realized a day like today when almost all of us are working remote because of the pandemic, but that whole origin of how we started the company has helped us over the years. Over the years, we started observing as we added customers that the true story for Netskope is to build a platform. So today, fast forward 9 years, we just celebrated our 9th birthday last month. We have built a cloud security platform that provides visibility and control and ability for organizations to address the risks associated with remote work, with adopting cloud applications like SaaS applications, as well as the lift and shift that is happening as part of digital transformation, where data is moving from on-prem applications to public cloud, for example. A big part of Netskope, in addition to providing the platform, is to address the risk associated with data. Data is a new currency these days. And one of the things I'm hoping we'll get further deep into this discussion today is how we go about protecting the data, which happens to be the price commodity of it.
Let's get right into it. That's a great question from Mike. How do we? Please tell us.
Yeah, from a data security standpoint, a lot of it is just got off. Strangely enough, this morning I was on a call with the Cloud Security Alliance, and this topic came up as well. So as we think about all the data that's in applications, I heard a good example last week. A fellow peer in the Dallas area, she brought up a comment around this castle and moat. She's all the data used to be in the castle, and we had a moat around it. Now the moat's dried up, and everyone's left with the crown jewels. So the data's everywhere. And the challenge you've got today is a lot of people are using manual controls, or especially in the pandemic, what we saw is a lot of pivoted to split tunnels off VPN, where they routed some traffic over the VPN, other traffic, largely your SaaS and cloud traffic, was going direct without any visibility or controls. And so now companies have lost sight where all that data is. And so that's where, when we look at that problem, your traditional controls were very just policy centric. As we start looking at how do you really make these programs scale where it's not a lot of manual investment, that's where using data science, machine learning to look for patterns and things like that start to automate a lot of those routine tasks and that identification, so that we can be more precise in our policies and take some of that manual swivel chair out of the equation.
Staying with you, Mike, what are some of the interesting and exciting projects that you and the team are currently working on there? And can you give us some insight to the current makeup of your broader tech and data team, the types of roles that are involved, and how you guys come together to work on an example project?
Yeah, so I can tell you more from an internal IT standpoint. A lot of it from our standpoint is we want to be a data-driven organization. And to do that, you have to start with good governance around how you create data. You can hire all the data scientists in the world, but you can't make bad data, good data. And so it starts with what's your business process that's going to create that exhaust of your business that's going to help you make better decisions, right? If you've got bad customer data, you can't connect the data that lives across your SaaS applications, from everything from how people interact with you online, all the way through how you convert orders and, invoice customers. All the wiring has to be right. And so those are some of the challenges we look at from an internal standpoint. But then as we cast out and we look at some of the data challenges we see our customers facing, they're very similar. The challenge that we even have as we look internally is we've made a couple of acquisitions. And when you think about acquisitions, McKinsey had an article that came out a couple of months ago that basically said we have more M&A activity going on now than we have in recorded history. And so with that, every time you buy a company, that company has one of everything, and you've got one of everything. So now you have two of everything. And every time you buy another company, you just continue to add to that problem. Before, you've got Baskin Robbins of applications, and each one of those has data within it. And as you think about the ability to make decisions from a business standpoint, we want to be able to have our teams collaborating, working off the same sets of data so we can make better decisions, identify white space where we can go cross-sell into an account. So as we buy, for example, a company at Netskope, we want to start looking, okay, how do we go sell whatever this new capability is into our existing set of customers, right? And data is part and parcel to that conversation. And so that's one of the areas where, when I'm talking to a lot of our companies, I spend a lot of my time talking to our customers, the challenges they have. And what comes up all too often is that they just have data everywhere and they need to be able to connect the dots, and having the right telemetry and visibility into what applications people are using, what data is stored in those applications, and how do I start to think about rationalization so I can go from 31 flavors of ice cream or applications down to a handful, or ideally get to one over time. That's some of the things that I'm worked on, both internally, again, our internal business process and how we use data to make better decisions. Externally, really, how do we help companies think about data as it resides in these applications, and as acquisitions occur, how do we rationalize those?
You are listening to the Alldus Podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Krishna, taking it back to you, in the space that you're operating in, it's advancing and changing at such a breakneck speed that to try and keep up with these technology changes when you're working in security is an incredibly difficult problem. How do you go about keeping up to date with technology in terms of the resources that you allocate and fighting these new emerging threats when it comes to security, while also protecting the data of your users?
No, that's a great question. It's exciting to be in security because it's a constantly changing environment. It's not a fixed one. So that's what makes the job exciting. As you pointed out, it is very important for us to keep up to date with what is going on. So there are a lot of resources out there in the web where we hear about the trends that are occurring in terms of attacks on data as well as on systems. So those are the resources that provide some information. But again, going back to what Mike said, I want to reiterate, I'm also a big believer in data, in power of data. So currently we are over 50 points of presence throughout the world. And we process about 50 billion transactions a day, right? So what we are doing is also we are constantly mining the data to see trends and correlating the data. So another source of information for us is also the data from our data lakes that gives us signals. Now, all of this data, the quest in security is how do I be proactive and not reactive? Most security solutions currently are reactive in the sense that I know about threats. Let me go and see how I can address those threats. But the real thing that you want to go after in security is how can I detect this unknown threats, right? How can I predict what might happen, how somebody is going to exploit vulnerabilities in the system. And that is where we have recently, I would say in the past couple of years, spent a lot of time in AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is showing a lot of in terms of mining the data in ways in which we can be more proactive and address the unknown threats. So it's a variety of like resources, known resources that are out there on the web, data mining that we do, as well as applying advanced techniques like AI and ML. And obviously, the best source of information also is our customers. So we keep our ears close to our customers, have engagements, and see what is it that the challenges that they're facing from a security point of view, and see how we can apply technology to that.
Thank you for that. Mike, I know this is an area you and I have spoken about previously. Is there anything more that you would add to that? Because I know this is something you're quite passionate about and also heavily involved in.
Yeah, I'd say it's interesting. Part of the reason I joined Netskope is I saw that we were solving some very unique problems. Because if you think of how the industry has evolved, we started from that space of understanding cloud and software as a service, the data, the interactions, the context, and how users interact. And to me, that's the hard problem that people are trying to solve. And when I think about some of the challenges, a good one would be where ML can come in. A common scenario is you're in a public company. You have insiders that are getting shown information about financials and how the quarter is looking or how the year is shaping up. And that information is not supposed to be shared outside of that insider group because those people get locked down from sharing, from selling stock during lockup periods and blackout periods. The challenge you run into, especially during the pandemic when we've all been virtual, is that people are taking screenshots, sharing that in Teams chat, or they're sending it in Slack or email. And all of a sudden now you've broadened who is really should be considered insider. That creates a lot of risk for a company, and often finding that person is challenging. And that's just one example. There's multiple there. And the ability to detect that, hey, that's a screen using ML to say, look at patterns and say, hey, that's financial information and it's marked as confidential. That shouldn't be shared outside. That shouldn't be shared in email. It shouldn't be sent in messaging. We should apply policy to that. Was one of the things when I see that ability to solve a problem that I experienced myself when I was at Schneider Electric, to me was one of the reasons I joined on over here. But adding on to the point Krishna made around our global network, if you look at the macro economy today, you're seeing a lot more restrictions around data residency, where things are inspected at. If you look at a lot of companies would say, I'm compliant with GDPR. But if you actually look at the laws in Germany from a German, worker council standpoint, they're actually more strict than GDPR. You also see the same things happening in other parts of the world as well. You see it within just inside states. The CCPA was applicable to people in California and the other states following suit. So being able to not only understand, look and inspect data, but then also apply policy to make sure you're not violating regulations and being subject to fines is important. And we're seeing our customers tell us, hey, if I'm in Saudi Arabia or I'm in Germany, I want to make sure that your point of presence where you're inspecting our data is in our country so that we can make sure we're respecting the privacy of our people. That's a key element. And on the other comment that Krishna made around some of the analytic pieces, to me, that's a super exciting. I'm a data guy by heart. I love data and analytics, and it's one of my passion areas. And when I think about some of the analytic journeys, we have the opportunity to start turning analytic journeys that take us from a question to an answer to then instrument that from a automation standpoint and using AI to start. When I talked to a fellow CIO, he said, look, at the end of the day, Nirvana is fully autonomous cybersecurity, where policies are automatically created and also pulled back on as the changes happen in my environment. right? Now we're ways off from that, but the ability to take and recommend, here's changes you should make in your environment or policy changes based on the data and observations that are happening to me is where the power is the next step in AI. Because as you make those recommendations and people say, yes, I'll take the recommendation. Yes, I'll take the recommendation. That builds that level of trust and leads us towards that autonomous security model, leveraging data science and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Guys, I want to switch gears slightly and look internally to Netskope, specifically talking about the growth ahead and how you guys collectively as the leadership team go about attracting top talent, particularly in the world of data where there's an incredible shortage and increasingly high demand. So talent is at Mike and Krishna, when you're speaking to candidates and prospective people about Netskope, what do you tell them about the journey, the mission, what you love about working there that gets them excited about about working at Netskope?
So when we talk to candidates, there are multiple things that we emphasize on. From a technical point of view, we are still act as a startup, very innovative. So our motto is innovate or die. We want to attract the talent that subscribes to that motto, right? Where people want challenges and they are willing to innovate. And security is a ripe space for innovation because, as we already pointed out, it's constantly changing. Right now, one of the things that we look for is the talent that we go after need not necessarily be exactly have worked on the security side, but somebody who has talent for looking at data and mining data. So we have people who worked in totally different fields like bioengineering and some other fields that have come to Netskope, especially in the data science side, to help build out some of the functionality that we have and technology that we have. Now, collectively inside Netskope, we have the subject matter expertise for security, but attracting more and more talent towards the data side and showing them the promise of how we are solving a social problem. All of us face this. Hackers are coming after data. They are disrupting businesses, disrupting critical infrastructure. When I talk to candidates, they feel empowered when they feel that they can come and make a difference in terms of working in technology that can solve these real social problems and help. And sometimes even extends beyond security. Like I've had some of the customers who are in the educational vertical who are worried about, who are under pressure in school and they try to create self-harm and so on. And these kinds of kids, what they do is they tend to use collaboration tools heavily. Things like Slack and Google Chat and so on. And the ability for us to mine the data and to predict that somebody may cause self-harm, right? And alert the school officials or the administrators so that they can at least take preemptive action. Those are very socially impacting problems that we have the opportunity to solve. So this is how we talk to our prospective candidates. And by far, our luck has been really good. We have had good success in attracting good talent at Netskope.
I'm going to go back to, there was one word that Krishna used that I think that a lot of people want to have. It's empowerment. And that's something that I'm personally passionate about. When I think about agility, it's you hire smart people. You want to give them the tools that they need to be successful, and then give them the unleash their creative potential. And so that's definitely something that we have here, and it's something we talk about. And our culture here is second to none. And we have everyone. What I love is the fact that everyone has intellectual curiosity, and that's something that is important as we hire people and attract candidates, is to make sure we get people that have that intellectual curiosity and that inclination for action to solve problems. Right. And think about things in new and different ways. We want people that own their learning journey and constantly want to learn new technologies and learn new ways to do things, because the world is changing so rapid. That intellectual curiosity and that desire to solve problems is one of the critical things we look for, because a lot of companies focus on compensation. But at the end of the day, people want to know that when they go to work every day, they're doing something meaningful, and they know that they're doing something that they can look back and know what their success is. And so I think obviously empowerment, intellectual curiosity, but then also making sure that you recognize people and celebrate your success is important. And those are things that we do here. And those are things when I talk to candidates, they pick up on that passion in Krishna's voice, all of our executive team, about the mission of our company, what we're trying to do, how we invest in solving problems for our customers and the world at large. And those are things we do and we talk about. In that excitement and passion is what attracts people to the top people to companies like Netskope.
Krishna, Mike, thank you both so much for today. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us, sharing your own backgrounds, giving us some insight into the work you're doing at Netskope, obviously the complexity of the problem, but how you're utilizing data and building towards AI to tackle this problem. It sounds like a fun and a great place to work, and we wish you guys all the best in the years ahead.
Thanks, JP.
Thanks, JP.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.